Hello and welcome to the channel. Here we make builds for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. We talk about game mechanics, we talk about classes, subclasses, just about anything else that is D&D related. My name is Nathan and welcome to the first build for the channel, what I am dubbing the Fiend Knight. Now, I had a couple of other ideas when I was thinking of what to call this build. Thought about calling it the Warlock or the Friend Killer or the Anti-Paladin, but ultimately we arrive on the Fiend Knight. I think it kind of incorporates most of what this build does. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to introduce and talk about the build concept. I'm going to talk about level 1, level 2 through 6, 7 through 9, 10 through 13, and finally 14 through 17 before we summarize. Now, for those of you that have seen any of D4's videos by Colby over there, I really like the way that he assesses his builds. So the way that we do that is we check our damage at levels 6, 9, 13, and 17. And that's kind of what I'm going to be using to evaluate this particular character. And as I say, the highest form of imitation, or the highest form of flattery is imitation. So, all right, here we go. So, introduction and build concept. So, this build is going to be a melee-focused Warlock who is not a Hexblade. We are going to have predominantly Warlock levels, so it's going to be another class mixed in there. But since we're not a Hexblade, we're going to be focusing on our strength. This is going to be a very powerful burst damage dealer with a decent amount of sustained damage output. For the sake of the numbers in this video, I'm going to be assuming that we're going to be trying to do as much damage in a single round to one enemy, hopefully obliterating them and just wiping them off the map. That may not be optimal in every circumstance, and obviously no build is ever played in a vacuum, so take that into consideration. This character will also have reasonable durability and utility thanks to some of their subclass features, basically having the spell slot progression of a full caster. The books that you'll need for this, you'll need the Player's Handbook, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. Those are the ones that I'm going to be using features from. All right, at level 1, we are a fighter. Yes, I know I said it's going to be mostly Warlock, but we are starting fighter specifically because it gives us proficiency in heavy armor, it gives us proficiency in martial weapons, and also makes us proficient in Constitution saves. The strength save is nice. Our strength save is actually going to be very good on this character because we're going to be primary on strength. But in order to be able to basically have this character work from the very beginning, they need to be a character. We need to be a fighter to be able to use the weapon that we want from the very beginning. All right, so for our race today, I'm going to be taking Variant Human. This means that I get a +1 to 2 ability scores of my choice, and I get a free feat at level 1. Now, that free feat is going to be the Polearm Master feat. So for those of you that don't know what this does, if you're using a polearm, there's a certain different selection of weapons, but we specifically want to be using a two-handed polearm of the halberd or glaive variety, whichever one you pick doesn't matter. But what this allows you to do is if you make an attack with that polearm, you can make a bonus action attack with the haft, which has a smaller damage dice, but it still keeps the properties of the main weapon, and it still counts as a two-handed weapon, or a heavy weapon, for the sake of other feats, which will be important later. And if you wanted to do another race, there is some argument here for half-elf, so you could potentially take Elven Accuracy, but for this particular build, because we are not going to be a Hexblade, Elven Accuracy only lets you basically get super advantage rolling 3 dice, essentially, and picking the highest one when you have advantage. It only works for attacks with with dexterity, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma. And since we're going to be primarily strength, we don't want to be a half-elf for that particular reason, just to qualify for that feat. The other reason that we are Variant Human is I want to get as much of our core stuff online as soon as possible, and having this feat now at level 1 will make us basically fully functional by the time that we're level 6 for our first damage check. So, our stats, we definitely want this is all point buy. I'm going to buy a 15 and put one of my +1s there in my strength. We're not going to buy anything on dex. We're going to buy a 14 in Constitution and a 15 in Charisma, put our other +1 there. This means that you have 2 points left over. You can put them wherever you want. On this character, I would probably put them in Wisdom to shore up that save. Probably either Wisdom or Dexterity, depending on what you want to do. For our fighting style that we get at level 1 as a fighter, we are going to be taking the Superior Technique fighting style. This is the fighting style from Tasha's. It lets us learn a maneuver of our choice from the Battlemaster list. We get 1 superiority dice to use that maneuver with. It is a d6, and we get back all of our superiority dice on a short rest. And you can only use 1 maneuver per attack. And with that fighting style, we're going to take the trip attack maneuver. So this maneuver, when we hit an enemy, we can force them to make a strength save, and the DC will be based on our strength. And if they fail, we knock them prone, and we also get to deal our extra d6 of damage to them, whether or not they save. We also get a second wind feature here, which as a bonus action lets us recover 1d10 plus our fighter level and health, which is nice for durability. For our starting equipment, we want to have a glaive or halberd, some chainmail, and some javelins. Later on, we will want an arcane focus or component pouch, and you can get all of this starting equipment from the class starting equipment. You don't need to do gold by here. And I would recommend for your skills, just take whatever you want, whatever fits your kind of backstory idea for your character. I would probably make sure I grab maybe athletics and perception. Athletics because we are strong, and perception is just one of the most often used checks. But you could also potentially, like with your background or something, get a charisma-based skill because we have a pretty high charisma and can kind of act as a face. I'm kind of envisioning the story of this character. We are perhaps a veteran of a war perhaps we grew up in a family where using polearms was just part of our education and training, and so hence we know that. But along the way, at level 2, we are going to be a warlock. So perhaps after the war, we made a deal. We made a deal with Fiend in exchange for power. Yes, that's right. We are taking our patron is going to be the Fiend. And so at the Fiend, with the Fiend patron at level 1, we get Dark One's Blessing, which this in particular, when we reduce a hostile creature to 0 hit points, we gain a number of temporary hit points equal to our charisma modifier plus our warlock level. We also get the Pact Magic feature here at level 1. So Pact Magic, the way it works, unlike normal spellcasting, we have a limited number of spell slots. At level 1, it's only 1. And all our slots are the same level. At level 1, again, it's only 1. And all of our spell slots come back on a short rest as opposed to a long rest, which is what all other spellcasters do. We get to know 2 spells at this level. I would probably take Hex and Armor of Agathes. There is a little bit of redundancy in Armor of Agathes given our Dark One's Blessing ability. And we also get 2 cantrips. I would take the Bread and Butter Eldritch Blast, and, as I'm going to talk about next, consider taking the Friend's cantrip. If you don't take this one, I would take one of the blade trips, so Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade, but there's a specific reason why we want the Friend's cantrip that I'm going to cover right now. So, Dark One's Blessing, starting at the first level, when you reduce a hostile, keyword hostile creature to 0 hit points, you gain temporary hit points equal to your charisma plus your warlock level, minimum of 1. These hit points never expire, so they basically last until they are depleted or you get a higher temporary hit points value. Now the keyword again here is hostile. I think the intent of this is so you can't, just go around, kill squirrels, caterpillars, butterflies, and get temporary hit points. That's how it is intended, but what if I told you we had a way around that? Yes, because the Friend's cantrip, it is an enchantment cantrip, casting time 1 action, range itself, it's concentration up to 1 minute. And for the duration, you have advantage on charisma checks directed at a creature of your choice that isn't hostile to you. When the spell ends, you can end it early. The creature, I'm editing out some words here. It says the creature realizes that you charmed it and becomes hostile toward you. And then there's a little explanation of possible things it might do. Now, what you can do with this, there's no save, and it doesn't really have a range requirement, anything like that. So what you can potentially do with this, there's a butterfly. You cast friends. You say, oh, hi, butterfly, I'm your friend. It lands in your hand. You end your concentration on the friend's cantrip, and you crush it. Because it became hostile toward you when you ended your concentration, and as it was hostile, you would get the hit points. So this is a little bit of a way around the ruling. The most important thing here is talk to your DM about this interaction before you decide to go this route and surprise them with it. I don't think this is too powerful by any means. At our highest point, this will be like, say, getting us 17 temporary hit points, basically on demand out of combat, and that isn't really that much. It's an amplification maybe 10 to 15% in terms of our total health. So again, talk to your DM about this particular interaction before you surprise them. But rules as written, it could work. I'm not sure this is an intended interaction, because the obvious intent is that you should be killing creatures in combat to get the temporary hit points. But regardless, that's why you might call this build the friend killer if your DM allows that. But again, most important thing, talk to your DM. All right, so at level 2, we are going to be taking our second level in Warlock, which means we get our Eldritch Invocations. At this point, I'm going to recommend you take Agonizing Blast and either Eldritch Mind or Devil's Sight. So Agonizing Blast lets you add your Charisma modifier to all the damage from your Eldritch Blasts, which is nice. And then Eldritch Mind gives you advantage on your concentration checks. And Devil's Sight lets you see through magical darkness. Now, don't get attached to these. We're actually not going to have any of them by the time that we are level 6, but you might get them back later. And for those that don't know, Devil's Sight lets you see through both magical and non-magical darkness. So one of the classic plays as a Warlock is when you get to Warlock 3, you take the darkness spell, you cast it on yourself, you're surrounded by this bubble of blackness, so enemies can't see you, but you can see them because you can see through the darkness. So there's a little bit of downside to that. It doesn't work very well when you have teammates in tight corridors, because now they can't see either. But if you want to do that combination, it is a classic thing, and we can do that. So we also get to learn another spell here at Warlock level 2. I'd recommend the Burning Hand spell, but again, this isn't actually going to be anything that we're going to be using long term, so kind of pick whatever you want. We also get a second spell slot here, and our spell slots are still level 1. At level 4, we are a Warlock 3, which means we get our Pact boon. And we're going to take Pact of the Blade. Now, what this does is it basically lets you bond with a weapon. Well, you can either conjure a spectral weapon of your choice and you become proficient with it, or you can bond with a weapon you already have, and you can shunt it into an alternate dimension and basically summon it. So you can do things like, hide your weapon, walk into, say, the ball. Like, let's say you're having a social event and there's an attack, you can basically draw your weapon out of thin air. It is a nice kind of utility, but the main thing is, the reason why we want this is there are a bunch of Eldritch Invocations that we want that require Pact of the Blade. So we don't get a new invocation here, but every time we get a Warlock level, we can retrain one. So we are specifically going to retrain our Eldritch Mind / Devil's Sight to improved Pact weapon. You can also retrain your Agonizing Blast here. It's just what I would do. What this invocation does, it makes the weapon we summon with our Pact ability kind of magical for the purposes of overcoming resistance, and it also gets a +1 to its attack and damage rolls if it didn't already have that. So this means that, say your DM has given you a Flame Tongue Glaive for some reason, which doesn't normally have a +1, you would get the +1. I'm not going to assume that you ever get any magic items when I'm doing calculations, so this helps us there. This also lets us use our Pact of the Blade weapon as our spellcasting focus, so that's nice. We don't have to worry about managing what we're holding in our hands because we can cast our spells with our glaive. It also lets you pick ranged weapons, specifically two-handed ones, as ones you can summon with your Pact of the Blade, but to be honest, we don't care. For our spells, we get to learn another spell here. I would learn Misty Step as an on-demand teleportation, as our spell slots are now level 2. At level 5, we get our first ability score or feat because we are a Warlock 4. We're going to take the Great Weapon Master feat. And what this does is once per turn, we can make a weapon attack as a bonus action if we got a critical hit or reduced a creature to 0 hit points. Now, we don't really care about that because we already have the ability to make a bonus action attack. So in niche situations, this will basically make that bonus action attack a little better because it can be with the blade of our weapon instead of half. But the real thing that we're here for is before we roll for an attack roll, we can decide to take a -5 penalty to that attack roll and then get a +10 bonus to the damage roll. This is specifically with heavy weapons, and the haft of our glaive counts as a heavy weapon. Here we also get to learn a new cantrip. I'm going to take Booming Blade because I'm assuming our DM is going to allow us to do the friends, make the butterflies, and squirrels hostile and crush them thing. But if your DM isn't going to allow that, I would just take basically whatever you want here. We also get to learn another spell here. I would take Scorching Rays. This is off of our patron spell list. It's a good, powerful ranged option here. And one of the nice things is if we have a spell like Hex on the enemy, which lets us add an extra damage dice every time we hit them, Scorching Ray shoots a whole bunch of bolts, which we can apply multiple Hex damages to that. And it's just a kind of a nice ranged utility option. Now, at level 6, we are a Warlock 5. There are no features here, but we do get to learn another spell, and we are going to learn Spirit Shroud. This is going to be our bread and butter spell for most of this character's progression. And at this point, I would retrain the Burning Hand spell for Fireball. Again, it's off of our packed list, and it's basically better. And our spell slots go to 3rd level. So on our invocations, we also get another one here at Warlock 5. We are going to take the Thirsting Blade invocation, which lets us make 2 attacks when we take the attack action with our Pact of the Blade weapon. So it's basically a Warlock extra attack. And we want to retrain our other invocation into Eldritch Smite. So what Eldritch Smite lets you do, once per turn, when you hit an enemy with an attack, you can spend one of your spell slots, and you get to deal extra damage to them, and it's force damage, equal to 1d8 plus another d8 for each level of the spell slot that you expend. I think it has to be a Warlock spell slot specifically. So at this level, our spell slots are level 3, which means it'll deal 4d8. And another thing, if the target is huge or smaller, we can knock them prone. They don't get any save. All right, so at level 6, it is time for our first damage report. So here are our tactics at this point. So in the first round, we're going to cast Spirit Shroud. Spirit Shroud, what this does is it basically lets us add a d8 to all of our damage hits against a target that is within 10 feet of us. We also get to reduce the speed of one of the creatures in that area by 10 feet, which is nice, but we're basically using this as something to ride our attack and let us deal extra damage. So we cast Spirit Shroud, and we run up and we attack twice. And then our Nova turn will happen in round 2 or later. We are going to attack the enemy and apply our trip attack to knock them prone. For the sake of the math, I'm assuming the enemy is prone after your first attack, but you can pretty much guarantee it, because if your first attack hits and they succeed on their saving throw against your trip, you then apply Eldritch Smite and guaranteed knock them prone. Now, ideally, we want to save the Eldritch Smite until they are already prone, because you have advantage on attacks against prone creatures, so we can potentially try to crit with it. But once they're prone, we are attacking with advantage on our second attack and our attack with the haft. So, just a quick thing on prone. When a creature is prone, it can only crawl, which takes double your movement, so they basically half speed, or they can stand up, which costs them half their movement. They have disadvantage on attack rolls while they're prone, and the reason we're putting them prone is an attack roll has advantage if the attacker is within 5 feet. Otherwise, attack rolls against that creature have disadvantage. Now again, in a vacuum, we basically need to do this to get advantage. In a real game situation, you might have an ally helping you. If your table plays with the flanking rules, then you might be able to have advantage from that. But for the sake of this and our damage calculations, I'm assuming there's nobody around and we are facing this baddie on our own. So, what do we have at this level? We have 2 attacks with our glaive, which is an improved pack weapon, for +7 to hit or +2 to hit if we're doing Great Weapon Master, dealing 1d10 plus 1d8 plus 4 or plus 14 if we're using Great Weapon Master. We have an attack with our Glaive Haft, again at the +7 or +2, and 1d4 plus 1d8 plus 4 or 14. Other things that we're going to apply here, we have our Trip Attack, which does a d6, and our Eldritch Smite, which does 4d8. So, therefore, against an enemy with an armor class of 10, we on average would do 73.5 damage in our burst round, and we are going to be using Great Weapon Master on every hit. Against an enemy AC of 15, we would do an average of 53.6 damage, but we're only using Great Weapon Master for the halved hit. So that's pretty good. That's quite a bit of damage at this level, and we haven't even gotten started yet. So at level 7, we are a Fighter 2, and we are here specifically for Action Surge. So this is a thing we can do once per short rest that lets us get an extra action on our turn. And we are going to use this to get ourselves a couple more attacks. So it'll make our burst round a lot bigger. This is, if you want to do a burst build, this can work with spells, it can work with attacks. This is one of the great things about a little bit of fighter. At level 8, we get our martial archetype in fighter, and we are a Battlemaster. So what this does is it gives us 4 more superiority dice, which are d8s. We also get to learn 3 more maneuvers of our choice. And for this character, I'm going to take Menacing Attack, which deals extra damage and lets us potentially frighten them. I'm going to take Rally, which lets us bolster either ourselves or one of our allies with temporary hit points based on our Charisma modifier and our roll, which is great because we have a good Charisma. This isn't one I'm going to be using in our burst round at all, but it's just kind of a nice to have. And we also get Precision Attack. So what Precision Attack does is it lets us apply our superiority dice to our attack roll after we roll, but before the DM says whether it hits or misses, and we can apply the bonus to the attack, potentially making the attack hit. Notably, this one doesn't do extra damage, but as I will explain later, we actually are going to be using this a lot. We get back all of our superiority dice on a short rest. And again, we can't use more than 1 maneuver per attack, but because we have now a total of 5 superiority dice, 1d6 and 1d8, in our burst round, we're going to be able to use all of them. Now, again, in a real situation, you might not want to do this, but for the sake of our numbers and our math, I'm going to assume that we are doing this. We also get the Student of War feature here, which gives us proficiency with a tool. It's nice, but again, it's not going to contribute to our burst round, so I'm not going to go over it in detail. Finally, at level 9, we are a Warlock 6, which gives us the Dark One's Own Luck feature. What this does is once per short rest, we can, when we make an ability check or a saving throw, we can roll a d10 and add it to the result. And we can do this after we roll the dice, but before the DM says whether it hits or misses. So this is kind of a good get out of jail free card on an important save or anything like that. And other than that, we get to learn another spell at this level. Again, our spells are all still level 3. So I'm going to say pick your favorite. And I would probably be retraining Hex at this point because it does not scale well with spell levels, and we have a better rider in Spirit Shroud at this point. Alright, so at level 9, I know it hasn't been very long, but we are going to do another damage report. So what have we gotten since the last time? We've gotten our Action Surge, we've gotten our 4 superiority dice, we've gotten our Menacing Attack, and our Precision Strike. So our tactics are as follows. In the first round, we are doing the same thing. We're casting Spirit Shroud with our bonus action, running up and attacking somebody twice. And then at any point in round 2 or later, we are going to attack and do our Trip Attack to knock the enemy prone. Again, same as before, if they succeed on their save against the trip, we Eldritch Smite here and knock them down guaranteed. Then we attack with a superior, while they're on the ground, we're going to attack them with a superiority dice. Now, mathematically at this point, you basically, when they're on the ground, you always want to polearm after them for the sake of damage, but you get to decide which maneuver you're going to use based on how well the dice fall. If your advantage, if it's close and you might hit, you want to do a precision attack to guarantee the hit, but if you know it's going to hit anyway, then don't bother. We'll use our D8 for damage on our Menacing Strike. The math I'm going to be doing, especially for the higher AC, if you come out a little bit ahead, if you always assume you're doing the precision strike, but in reality it's a little bit of a switch up and the damage might actually be a little higher. But that is going to be the plan. So after we've made our 2 attacks, we're going to action surge and attack twice again, using our superiority dice doing the same thing. And then finally we're going to make our half attack with our superiority dice. We will be Eldritch Smiting somewhere, either on the first attack if they succeed on their save, or we want to crit fish with it because we're going to be making 4 attacks with advantage. And if we get a 20 at some point in there, we'll get to double that dice. So what are we doing at this point? We have 4 glaive attacks with our improved pack weapon, +8 to hit, and +3 with our Great Weapon Master on. We are still doing 1d10 plus 1d8 plus 4/14, but at this point we get 4 of those attacks because we're action surging. We have our glaive half. We've gotten +1 to hit since the last check because our proficiency bonus has gone up. And then other things we have riding on here, we've got our trip attack at our d6. Our Eldritch Smite is still 4d8, but now we're adding in another 4d8 of superiority dice. So against an enemy with an armor class of 10, we would on average be doing 139 damage at this point, when we will always be Great Weapon Mastering those attacks. Versus an enemy with armor class of 16, we would deal on average 107.5 attacks, and we're going to Great Weapon Master every attack but the initial one. Importantly, again, remember that we are going to be using our Precision Strike if our attack roll is close but not good enough, and we will be using Menacing Attack otherwise. So, that is a 89% increase in our damage against a target with an AC of 10, and more than doubling our damage against a target with an AC of 16. So we are doing great at this point. At level 10, we are a Warlock 7, and our bond with our Fiend is only deepening. So at this point, we learn another spell, and we get to learn a 4th level spell here, as our spell slots have now upped to level 4. And at this point, I would take Shadow of Moil or Banishment. So Shadow of Moil is almost like a better darkness spell. I believe it's out of Tasha's. But it basically makes you heavily obscured when you cast it. Makes it so that makes it so enemies can't see you, so you get advantage all the time. And then if an enemy hits you, they take fire damage. But Banishment is just a really good utility spell in general. You can potentially just yoink an enemy out of existence for an entire minute. If they're not even native to the plane, they're gone forever if they fail their save. And that can potentially just remove an enemy from combat, and you kill their friends, and then you bring them back when everybody has a ready to action, and you just destroy them. So both those spells are great. I would retrain your spells as needed here, however you want. There are a lot of good 4th level spells here, but those are the ones that I would recommend. We also get to learn a new invocation here. And I would recommend, we basically have everything we can at this level that's going to fortify our attacks. So I would get something with utility, potentially Agonizing Blast, because way back at level 5, our Eldritch Blast got a 2nd beam. So having that range option is nice. You could take Devil's Sight, because having Dark Vision is great. And as a human, we don't have it. You could also take Eldritch Mind to fortify your concentration checks, or something like Tomb of Levistus, to give you kind of a get-out-of-jail-free card against a big hit. But at this point, take what you want. Those are some ones I would recommend, but there's a lot of good ones here. At level 11, we are a Warlock 8, and we are going to get an ability score increase or feat here, and we're going to bump our strength to 18. We also learn another spell here at 4th level. I'm going to recommend Dimension Door. It's a great teleportation spell. You could potentially replace your Misty Step with this. Although Misty Step is still good, you can teleport with the bonus action instead. But just continue to retrain your spells as you need, especially if there's a better version of a lower level spell that you want to use. At level 12, we are a Warlock 9. We get to learn another spell here. Again, pick your favorite. We're now open to 5th level spells. Again, retrain as needed. We get to learn another invocation here, and again, you're going to pick whatever you want, probably from that list I discussed earlier, but again, we don't have anything in particular at this point that really jives with what we're doing. Now, importantly here, 5th level spells means that we can upcast Spirit Shroud now, so that it applies 2d8 damage on hit. At level 10, we are a Warlock 10. We get to learn another cantrip here. Again, take whatever you want. Nothing is going to be useful in our burst round. You might get some kind of utility out of this. And we get the Fiendish Resilience trait here. This trait, when we complete a rest, we get to pick a damage type. And we get resistance to that damage type until we finish another rest when we switch it. And I don't think we get to resist magical weapons or silvered weapons, but again, this just makes us more resilient. So we've got our luck to potentially get us out of jail free on a saving throw or ability check. We've got our temporary hit points, which will refresh when we kill things, maybe when we still kill caterpillars or squirrels. And we also have this to give us resistance to a damage type. If you know what you're going to be facing, like, oh, it's a red dragon that breathes fire, I guess I can get fire resistance, or I can get slashing damage or piercing resistance. This thing can be great. So it'll make us durable, but again, we're not here for the durability. We're here for the damage. And speaking of damage, it is time for our next damage report. So what have we gotten since last time? Our spell slots are now level 5. They were level 3 last time. So now we can upcast Spirit Shroud. It'll add 2d8 of damage to every hit. And since our spell slots are level 5, since last time we checked, now our Eldritch Smite is going to do 6d8 of damage. Importantly, our strength has also gone up by 2 here, which means we have a +4 modifier, so another point of damage on every hit, and our attack rolls are going to be a little better. Our strategy has not changed, and it's not going to change until the very end when we add another thing, but at this point, we are going to be doing the same thing as we did last time. So at this point, again, we have 4 of our glaive attacks, and we're now at +10 or +5 to hit, with 1d10 plus 2d8 and 5/15. Our glaive half has the same damage bonus, same attack bonus, and 1d4 plus 2d8 plus 5 or 15. Our trip attack and our superiority dice are still the same, and our Eldritch Smite is now 6d8. So, therefore, against an enemy with an armor class of 10, we are going to do 184.2 damage, always using Great Weapon Master. And against an enemy with an armor class of 17, we are going to be doing 145.9 damage. And again, we are Great Weapon Mastering all but the first hit. So compared to last time, this isn't as big of a bump. It's only a 33% increase in our damage against enemies with low armor class and a 36% increase at the higher end. But we are still getting stuff. We are still scaling. We've gotten high-level spell slots and better spells for more utility, as well as increasing our resilience. So at level 14, we are a Warlock 11, and that means that we get our first Mystic Arcanum. So the way this works, instead of getting higher level spell slots, Warlocks get to pick a spell from their list and cast it once per long rest. Again, there isn't really anything that we're going to be using in our burst round here, but there are a lot of good spells here. I would say pick your favorite. There's some interesting ones in like Create Undead and some other spells like that, but again, we get to learn another spell here, and we also get our Mystic Arcanum spell here. You can continue to retrain as needed. But the nice thing that we get here at Warlock 11 is now we get, instead of 2 spell slots for short rest like we've been doing the whole time, now we get 3, which means that we're not done. We're not going to spend all of our resources in that first round. We still have another spell slot to do something, which is great. And at level 15, we are a Warlock 12, which means we get another ability score or feat. We're going to bump our strength to 20 at this point, and we get to learn another invocation. And we are going to take the Life Drinker Invocation. This is the one we've been waiting for a long time. What this does is this invocation requires level 12 in Warlock and Pact with Blade. And what it does is it lets us add our Charisma modifier to all the damage of our hits with our Pact weapon. So at this level, we're essentially getting +4 damage because we've upped it 1 from our strength, and now we get to add our charisma as well, which is another +3. At level 16, we are a Warlock 13, which means we get our Mystic Arcanum here at level 7. And honestly, I would take Force Gauge. It is an amazing spell, but again, you can take whatever you want here and continue to retrain as needed. Again, the spells that we're getting here have nice utility and are potentially very powerful, but we're not going to be using them in our burst round. At level 17, we get our Warlock Patron capstone feature, which is called Hurl Through Hell. And this is the reason why I've been pushing this far for Warlock, because I specifically wanted this feature at the very end. Very thematic, very cool. When we hit an enemy with an attack, we get to send them on a nightmare journey through the plains of hell. They vanish from their space, and they take 10d10 psychic damage, no save. And then they reappear in the space they left at the end of our next turn. So this is an immense amount of damage. There is no save. Basically, with our tactics, how we're going to use this, we are going to apply it on the very last hit. That's how I'm going to be doing it mathematically. It can't crit because this is not something that it's not part of the attack roll. But still, it is a lot of damage, and we basically dropped a truck on this person from orbit. If they survived all of our initial burst, now we send them on a preview of their demise, and then they might just reappear dead at our feet. So, for our final damage report, what has changed? We've gotten our strength from 18 to 20, so +1 to our attack and damage rolls. Life Trigger adds our charisma, or +3 to our weapon damage, and we've got Hurl Through Hell, which does 10d10, or on average, 55 points of damage. Our tactics, the only thing that's changed here is we are going to Hurl Through Hell on our very last hit, which is probably going to be the half hit, that I'm just going to be assuming. So, again, nothing has really changed here, except for our plus to hit is now +12 or +7, and our extra damage is now +9 or +19 on both our glaive haft and our glaive itself. And we've added Hurl Through Hell to our extra damage. So, against an enemy with an AC of 10, at this point on average, we would be doing an average of 259.3 damage. And we are always going to Great Weapon Master those hits. Against an armor class of 18, that's what that actually is, I just didn't update it here, but it's against an armor class of 18, we would do on average 214 damage. And again, Great Weapon Mastering all but the first hits. So again, that's against AC 18, not 17. This is an increase of 75 points of damage, or 41% against AC 10, and +68.1 damage, or 47% against our higher armor class, which again is 18. So this is a great increase. We actually got better, relatively speaking, than last time, and overall, this is a lot of damage. If this doesn't absolutely annihilate your target, they are going to be very low. So, in summary, the overall score of this build. So in order to calculate this, I'm going to take all the numbers from all of our damage reports, I'm going to add them together and average them. And so that number comes out to be 147.1. This is quite a bit. If you watch any of Colby's videos, this would probably put it at the top of his tier 2, bottom of his tier 1. But since it's my first one, this is the best one so far, obviously. That is great. This character, we do a lot of damage. We are durable, and it's just pretty cool. We are not a Warlock who's melee, but we're not a Hexblade. So, one of the things, you could do a crossbow version of this character, and there are a lot of advantages to being ranged instead of melee. If you were to do that, I would swap our strength and dexterity scores and start with the crossbow expert feat, and then take the sharpshooter feat. You wouldn't be able to use heavy armor here. You'd have to go with medium, but fighter still gives us that proficiency. We wouldn't be able necessarily to use the spirit shroud and prone thing as well, but the way around that is you just walk up right next to them, you take that first attack from 10 feet away, you try to knock them down, and then once they're down, you stand right next to them. Normally, range attacks would get disadvantage on their attack rolls against enemies that are prone, but because we would be a crossbow expert in this case, that wouldn't apply, and we would actually get advantage because we're within 5 feet of them. And I might take the archery fighting style out of fighter instead of the superior technique, because that would just kind of shore up our damage a lot. But again, that's a different version. You can do that if you wanted to, but for this character, I went with the glaive. Now, if we were going to go to level 20, what would I do with the remaining 3 levels? And I honestly think I would continue to take Warlock levels, because once we get to Warlock 17, which is what we would be at level 20, we would get the 9th level spells. And there's also another invocation or two that we get. But overall, I think I would want to have that 9th level spell if I was going to keep going here. So how would you do a Hexblade version of this? So I would not take as many, not end up taking as many Warlock levels. I would probably only go with 12, I would think, for the ability score increases. And I would go with half elf because if we are a Hexblade, then we can attack with our charisma and take advantage of the elven accuracy feat. That build would probably end up doing a little more damage than this one, but at the same time, it doesn't have the hurl through hell at the end. Like, you would probably be better by a little bit until you got to the very last one, and then this build would probably win because of that massive nuke that it gets as its capstone. But this build would have really nice accuracy with the elven accuracy while they're prone. It would take you a little bit longer to get your feats and that kind of thing, but I would potentially take more fighter levels to be able to get that feat and that kind of thing. So there's a balance to it. I think the Hexblade might end up being again, doing more damage, but you're not going to have the same kind of durability that this character is. This character is going to have higher armor class with heavy armor, specifically probably plate, and the Hexblade is probably going to end up running medium armor because, well, you don't have to. You could probably still go heavy, but it requires a more ability score investment to go heavy armor than just take medium. So yeah, if you got this far, thanks for watching. What did you think? Let me know in the comments. If there is a character build that you'd like to see next or that kind of thing, again, let me know. But yeah, these are fun and a blast for me to do. They take a little more effort than other videos, but this is my first non-intro video on the channel. So again, thank you for watching. My name is Nathan. I will see you next time.